Hello and welcome to TBTV. I'm Elliot Mully-Goodbarn. Today I'm joined by Brendan Rawle, who is Head of Interconnection at Equinix. Hello Brendan, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks for having me. Good
No
to be here.
worries mate. And we'll be discussing technical innovations in manufacturing. Now, before we get deep into that, how about Brendan, you tell me a little bit about Equinix and what you guys do?
I'd love to, yes. So as you said, I'm the Director of Interconnection at Equinix in EMEA, and for your viewers who may not be fully aware of what we do, Equinix is an interconnection and platform company. But actually behind that, the history of the company is really based on the data center business. We've been a data center company for 20 years, and we operate data centers, or international business exchanges as we call them, in 25 countries now, in over 50 markets, and over 200 actual individual data center sites. So when you take the physical data center, the interconnection platform that we have, and then the digital ecosystem that we host, that's really the value proposition that we bring to the market. And those three things, the data center, the interconnection, the ecosystems, combined with our global reach, combine to form what we call the digital edge. And it's the digital edge that all sorts of industries, including manufacturing, are coming to today to procure services, to connect with their partners, to operate in ecosystems, and to go through this thing that we call digital transformation.
Fantastic. Well, you mentioned interconnectivity as well. So you guys had a report out recently on interconnection.
We have, yeah. I mean, interconnection is the sort of, probably along with our global reach, is probably the key part of our business now. And it's always been a major part of our business. The founders of our business 20 years ago devised the idea of these particular data centers to solve an interconnection problem. And if your viewers will cast their minds back, some of them are old enough, to sort of the mid-1990s, this is the point at which the internet really is starting to come of age, is starting to get internet services in your home. And that means that huge increases in traffic. And the network service providers at the time, both in Western Europe and in North America, realised that you had to interconnect your networks in much different ways to the way that they'd done before. And it became obvious to our founders that you were going to need a carrier-neutral facility to do that. And that was the environment that Equinix were born into. So it was an interconnection use case from day one. If you'd have walked into our early data centres back in the late 90s, you wouldn't have really seen many servers or storage arrays. It would have been high-end routers and lots of interconnections between them. So interconnection has been really important to our business. Now, the main change that we've seen, in fact, is over 20 years, we've gone very much from the plumbing of the internet to interconnection as a means to solve technology and business problems across all sectors. It's no longer just telecoms and content providers. And you referenced the report, actually. Yeah, we've been talking about interconnection in different ways for a number of years now. But what we found was that the industry wasn't doing a very good job in describing what interconnection is, providing frameworks, or indeed providing a baseline and a forecast for growth. So we've released the third edition now of our Global Interconnection Index. And that seeks to, as I said, track, measure and forecast interconnection bandwidth globally, regionally and by sectors, including manufacturing, that we'll come on to in a moment. It also provides use cases, and then it provides deployment guidelines as well. The highlights really are that by 2022, we can see that interconnection bandwidth will be double the size of the global internet, and actually 13 times the volume. And to give you an idea, that will be around about 13,500 terabits. So very, very big numbers.
Yeah,
we'll be looking at, huge, yeah.
So and then I mean, you mentioned globally as well. So what about the UK and EMEA? And I mean, where does the UK sort of stand when it comes to these sort of data centers and the interconnection piece?
Yeah, it's a good point. The UK business is in very robust health, actually, and the UK and London in particular, but now Manchester as well, there's always been a strong hub for global interconnection. In fact, in the Global Interconnection Index, as we break it down, we see that by 2022, London will account for, I think it's about 37% of all interconnection in Europe will be in London. Mm-hmm. The other big markets are Frankfurt, Amsterdam and Paris, and between those four, you'll be looking at sort of nearly 3/4 of all interconnection in Europe will be in those markets. But London's in great health, and obviously we have the the shadow of Brexit over things. But frankly, we're not really seeing much impact on that at the moment. We're seeing that the underlying demand for digital services is very, very strong. Our investment in the UK market continues. We've just recently launched LD7, as it's called, which is a new big flagship data centre for us out in west of London on our big campus out there. That was a £90 million investment, and in the 12 months up to 2019, we'll be investing £295 million in the UK infrastructure. And really that's a reflection of the very, very strong demand that we see for digital services, things like cloud services and interconnection.
And is that with a particular keen eye on manufacturing at all? Or
it is. I mean, the interconnection index study that we have breaks it down, and actually the biggest sectors, and not surprisingly, telecoms and network is the top. That's the bread and butter of their business, so that's where a lot of the interconnection lives. And then you have cloud and IT, and financial services, of course, is very strong for the UK as well. But then manufacturing just comes behind that, really. And the journey that Equinix has been on is really one of, as I said, migrating from a business that serves network, content and cloud to serving a much broader enterprise. And we do see manufacturing pushing to the top of that sort of pack now as organisations and sectors that are starting to work with organisations like us to help with their digital transformation. So yeah, manufacturing is significant. And
what sort of interconnectivity can you see within a manufacturing hub at the moment? I mean, there's a lot of talk about smart factories, and I'm sure that topic will come up a little bit later. But I mean, right now, I mean, what sort of technologies are you guys seeing, or are you guys getting involved in?
Yeah, I mean, one of the ones that we think is going to have a big role to play for manufacturing would probably be 5G, and we'll come on to that a little bit. I mean, we have an interest in 5G clearly beyond manufacturing. No, we're not a mobile network provider. We're on the edge of that in a sense of we work with all of the big mobile providers, in partnership. But what I think is interesting for 5G in particular is phase one is really about getting the infrastructure out there, selling more mobile phones, frankly, a bit of a land grab for subscribers. That's what we're starting now with the initial services. And then phase two will be really how they can start to monetize 5G in terms of the services that are offered into the enterprise and into manufacturing. And that starts to be quite interesting for us, because then if you look at a sector like manufacturing, you'll see that historically perhaps they haven't been the most agile, they haven't been typically one that has brought new technology through particularly well. But I think when you start to see new 5G services and the possibility of interconnection within manufacturing, then you're going to start to see more innovation.
Right. And I mean, just in a broad sense, do you feel like the manufacturing sector is maybe ready for 5G to come in and have this interconnection piece?
Yes, yeah, and I sort of said that at times they've been a bit slow, but we should be clear, there's a lot of innovation happening in manufacturing. I think if you look at the actual design and manufacturing process itself, the way that takes in real-time technologies, AI, augmented reality, virtual reality, things like digital twins, we have quite a role to play there, because a lot of the organisations that are providing services into those into manufacturing are hosted with us. So a lot of innovation there. There's a lot of innovation around digital supply chain now, of course, into manufacturing. And the third area I think where you do see a lot of innovation is kind of what you can call data-driven insights or data-driven process. So historically, there's been quite a gap between the design process, the manufacturing, and then the point of consumption. With connected devices, Internet of Things, that's really changing now, and you create this feedback loop between how a product or a service is used directly back into the manufacturing. So that data-driven insight with these very large data sets that are available will start to be of interest. And then, we will start to see 5G pushing into factories a little bit more, of course, soon.
And with 5G in relation to those analytics and sort of data-driven insights, is that more the sort of latency and speed of 5G, or is that the ability to compute those and crunch those numbers on the edge of the network?
It is. 5G will, I mean, the first thing to say is in terms of connectivity options, 5G will be part of the broader tool set. So you will see in let's say big campus environments, manufacturing factories, you'll see 5G coming in. You will still see Wi-Fi, Wi-Fi 6, and a lot of companies are putting effort into that. You'll see various low power technologies, IoT technologies as well. It will be a blend of all of those. Now, where 5G starts to be very interesting is the increased speed that it gives, certainly the deterministic performance, the throughput, but then the reliability as well. So as organizations start to develop new use cases, they will leverage 5G to underpin some of those. Some of the more interesting ones within the factory is the transportation of video around the factory. I think will be very interesting. You have the autonomous guided vehicles that are obviously already extensively in use. 5G could have a big role to play in those, certainly in areas of precision engineering and robotics, and again automation. You can think that 5G will have a role there. And then a topic that we're looking at quite a lot, as you mentioned, I think, is this whole idea of edge compute or edge cloud, and that's a very interesting topic going forward as well.
I mean, why is that? Why is that from your perspective?
Yeah, if I could sort of maybe step back a little bit and talk a little bit about edge cloud and what it is and why people think it's going to be important. So, if you look today how services are used and how services are delivered, then for the most part, a lot of those services are located in the digital edge at somewhere like Equinix. And the latency and the distance you have between the users and those services is pretty good for what it is. For the type of services we use today, that's fine. Let's say that could be 20 or 30 milliseconds. It could be the distance from a user in the southwest of the UK to a data centre in London. No particular problems with that at all. What we're going to see with 5G is a whole bunch of new use cases that will challenge particularly that latency and certainly challenge the amount of data that needs to go up and down between the service and the user. And some of the popular ones that organisations are looking at now are gaming, augmented reality, virtual reality, autonomous vehicles will be a big one, and that almost goes hand in hand with 5G at the moment. And then factory of the future and sort of campus of the future. A lot of the applications you'll find there will mean that compute and processing will need to get much closer to the users. And this drives this trend of edge cloud or telco edge cloud, as we see. So it's something that we're looking at, and it's something that all of the industry are looking at. We do believe it will happen. It's very, very early days at the moment. People are still trialing the use cases. But in terms of something like a factory, you might see a situation where a factory of the future has a dedicated slice or a dedicated part of a 5G network, and then the mobile provider may wrap all sorts of different services around that in terms of edge compute, edge cloud, security, and others as well. So once you get to that point, then I think manufacturing again will start to be able to leverage mobile technology in a very interesting way.
And we were speaking earlier a little bit about sort of like the networks and the operators and the fact that they hold a lot of sort of spectrum, and they almost in control at the moment, or they are in control at the moment. But and they need maybe an incentive to maybe roll out new services, or it's got to be commercially viable, is what I'm probably angling at. So I mean, when it comes to these sort of smart factories, I mean, do you see that as a viable, a smart decision for these networks to sort of plough investment and get that right?
I do actually. The big question is, of some of those use cases we talked about, what will be the early ones that will drive that investment with a return on the business case? Now, again, first of all, it's going to be a lot of consumer-facing things with mobile, with 5G. The feedback that we've got from the large mobile providers is that, sure, there's a lot of buzz around autonomous cars and this, but actually the standalone factory, large manufacturing campus is one that they can understand quite well, because perhaps quite often those large organisations are probably existing customers of the big mobile providers or the big telecoms providers. They probably get significant network services from them today. So they understand their business certainly to a degree. And the feeling is that with the end-to-end capabilities that large organisations like, let's say, BT and Vodafone have, they should be able to wrap mobile services, security services, computing services, access to third parties around that factory environment, around that manufacturing company. And that includes, by the way, brokering connectivity back into something like Equinix, where a lot of significant processing will still go on. So to your point, we absolutely see that manufacturing and sort of factory applications in the enterprise space probably is one of the first ones that they will try to look at and will try to address.
And we as I say, we've said smart factories a few times now, but I mean, could you give us sort of a broad sort of view of what that may well look like and how the interconnectivity sort of feeds in?
Yeah. I mean, within the actual factory environment, of course, that's going to mean a lot of automation. It's going to mean a lot of precision technology and robotics. It's going to mean a lot of changes to the plant itself. In terms of the interconnection, what you're going to see potentially, as I said, is more local interconnection. So you may see, for example, major IT and cloud providers pushing services much deeper towards these environments, and it may be that it's the mobile providers or perhaps people like Equinix who help to broker the interconnection much deeper in the network between, let's say, the big manufacturer and cloud partners or other partners that they have. So we believe that interconnection is key to that you will see the point of interconnection move a little bit deeper into the network at certain times. But what is clear is that a lot of these applications are going to produce significant amounts of data, and while some of that data will certainly be processed locally, a lot of it's going to have to come back to places like our large IBX facilities. So a lot of that innovation that happens out in the factory and in the manufacturing sector is going to need reliable interconnection back to the core and back to the hub, and again that takes it back to Equinix.
Right. And so in terms of your sort of channel offering and your partners, so I mean, we talk a lot about in the industry, smart factories and 5G and use all these buzzwords, but a lot of the time the actual sort of monetization of it from a channel perspective can be lost. So I mean, where do you see the channel and your, as I say, your partners sort of getting involved in these smart factories?
Yeah, great question. And for us, that's actually a slightly sort of new part of our business as well. Up until maybe 4 or 5 years ago, we didn't really have what you would call a channel program as such. We had organisations that would resell some of our space and power, but we didn't wrap it with the traditional channel program or focus on the channel partners. Now, the way that we want to scale our business really in the end is going to be through partnerships. So our channel partners and the program we have around that is extremely important. How do I think channel partners can help in manufacturing? Actually, we just did a survey alongside the Global Interconnection Index. We ran a separate parallel survey which talked to 850 enterprise IT leaders and asked them specifically about their view of the channel and their view of the partners. The number one response for how channel partners can help actually came back in general is to adopt cloud services. And then the second one is with security services. Now, everything we've talked about in terms of the future of manufacturing in the factory, security is going to be extremely important from the ground up. So I can see a huge role for our partners to play in terms of security into this sector. And I can see a huge role for our partners to play in terms of brokering that interconnection. I mean, really, you're looking at a challenge that manufacturing has that is very similar to other industries in the end. This digital transformation that they're going through, perhaps the biggest challenge they have is the skills within the business that they don't necessarily have. So it's up to them to start to buy in services rather than build their own. That's where the channel can help. And to consume innovation. So if you're a really good channel partner or a really good partner organisation, integrator, who can speak the language of the manufacturing industry in a way that we can't, and you can pull together these different solutions that might include a cloud services, it might include a security service. That's where you can really start to bring value into the manufacturing sector.
And finally, I mean, when it comes to sort of manufacturing, I mean, how much value does Equinix as a sort of company place it in that sort of industry?
We do significant, yeah. I mean, we've got a number of big wins across the sector in recent years. As I said, if you look at the Global Interconnection Index that we have, you have network and telecoms, cloud IT, financial services next, and then manufacturing really is pushing in as perhaps the most next significant for us. And that's starting from really a position where that wasn't essentially a sector that we really addressed up until some years ago. So it's a big one for us. Manufacturing uses a lot of data. They're going to be big adopters of IoT and 5G, and they're starting to be big adopters of cloud technology as well. And obviously we can help with all of those. So yeah, it's a sector that we love working with and we'll do more with for sure.
Fantastic. Unfortunately, that's all we've got time for. Thank you very much, Brendan, for talking me through that. And thank you very much for watching as well. For more insights on the IT Reseller channel, please go to @TBTodayMag on Twitter, and technologybusinesstoday.com is our website. Thank you very much.